Most Americans have no idea what is happening. But behind the scenes, in quiet government meetings, foreign banks, oil contracts, and trade settlements, the world is already walking away from the US dollar. The United States held this privilege of having the world's reserve currency since the end of World War II. That gave them power, influence, and the ability to live far beyond their means without any consequences. But that privilege is fading. Saudi Arabia, the cornerstone of the petrodollar system, chose not to renew its long-standing agreement with the United States. That means oil, for the first time in nearly 50 years, can now be sold in other currencies. Some BRICS members, including China, Russia, India, and now Saudi Arabia, are increasingly bypassing the dollar in trade, settling deals in yuan, rupees, and even gold. Russia and China are building their own financial systems. India is doing deals with African nations using their local currencies. Even France, a longtime US ally, just bought liquid natural gas from China using yuan. This isn't conspiracy. This isn't a forecast. This is happening now. Meanwhile, central banks are diversifying their reserves, increasing gold holdings, and in some cases, reducing reliance on US Treasuries as a part of that strategy. And you know what that means? They're losing trust in the dollar. They don't trust the dollar like they used to. And gold, it's not just going up in dollars. It's hitting record highs in yen, euro, rupees, yuan, and Canadian dollars too. That's not just about inflation. That's about trust, global trust disappearing. Because when a country loses reserve status, it doesn't just lose influence overseas. It loses its ability to borrow cheaply and to import cheap products and to live comfortably on credit. And if you're thinking, come on, this is America, that could never happen here, just ask yourself, how many other superpowers in history thought the same thing right before the world moved on without them? So what happens when the world no longer wants our dollars? Let me paint you a picture. A story from the near future, maybe. Imagine this scenario. It's any other Tuesday. You wake up, grab your phone, and see a headline that doesn't sound dramatic enough to matter. US Treasury auction sees weak demand. That's it. No panic, no alarms, just another financial headline most people scroll past. But by lunchtime, something feels off. The stock market's down hard, not crashing, just sliding. The dollar's weaker again. Gas jumps $1 in a single day. News channels keep saying the same line over and over. This is just temporary. That night, another alert hits. Saudi Arabia announces its first major oil contract priced outside the US dollar. No speeches, no drama, just a press release. The next morning, the dollar drops again, this time more sharply. Your credit card still works, your bank account still shows a balance, nothing looks broken. But behind the scenes, something fundamental has broken. Foreign buyers aren't showing up to buy US debt like they used to. US Treasuries, the safest asset, suddenly needs higher interest rates just to attract buyers. That pushes mortgage rates up, auto loans go up, same with credit cards. And it happens fast. Within weeks, companies that rely on imports start quietly raising prices. Electronics, appliances, clothing, and food. Walmart doesn't explain why their shelves look thinner. Amazon doesn't explain why shipping is taking longer. And Apple doesn't explain why the next iPhone costs 40% more. They don't have to. The dollar just doesn't buy what it used to. Then something else changes. Americans traveling overseas notice their credit cards getting declined. Not everywhere, just more often, and it's unusual. Hotels ask for deposits in euros instead of dollars. Some vendors start to not take dollars at all. It feels almost embarrassing or unsettling. For the first time in living memory, Americans feel what it's like to be on the other side of the global currency system. Back in America, the government reassures everyone. This is not a loss of reserve currency status. This is not a crisis. The fundamentals are still strong. But the math tells a very different story. Interest expense on the national debt explodes. The government has to issue more debt just to pay interest on the old debt. That pushes rates higher yet again. It's a continuous loop. Gas hits $10 in some states, not because oil disappeared, but because it's no longer priced in US currency. Your paycheck still comes in dollars, your savings are still in dollars, your retirement account is still in dollars, but the rest of the world isn't. Foreign sellers now decide what they accept, and increasingly, it isn't US dollars. Nothing collapses overnight, no Mad Max scene, no currency burning in the streets, just a slow, grinding realization. America can no longer print its way out of its problems. America has to earn back trust, and that's not easy. And for a country built on cheap debt, cheap imports, and global trust, that's a brutal adjustment. So after all that, you might be thinking, come on, is this actually going to happen, or is Noel just telling us another scary story? It's a fair question, so let's talk about the real likelihood and what's already in motion. How likely is this really? Now let's ground this. Is this kind of scenario likely to happen exactly like that? No, not all at once, not in a single headline or dramatic collapse. That's not how reserve currencies die. They don't crash overnight, they erode. And that erosion, I believe it's already happening. The US dollar still dominates global trade, but its grip is slipping. Just look at the trend. In 2001, the dollar made up 73% of global reserves. Today, it's below 59% and falling. Meanwhile, central banks are buying record amounts of gold. Countries like China and Russia are building entire trade systems that don't use the dollar at all. Even allies are hedging their bets. Japan, France, India, they're not ditching the dollar, but they are diversifying away from it because they see what might be coming. America's debt is exploding. Interest payments are already nearing $1.5 trillion a year and rising. Our own Treasury has to auction off billions in debt every week just to pay the bills. If demand for that debt ever dries up, even a little, the whole system shakes. And the truth is, the only thing keeping this game going is confidence. The belief that the dollar will always be needed. But confidence doesn't last forever, especially when you abuse the privilege. And let's be honest here, they've abused it. The US has printed trillions. They've weaponized the dollar. They've backed other nations into a corner and expected them to stay loyal. But power doesn't work like that, at least not forever. And if the world can trade without needing US dollars, I believe it will. And once the shift really begins, once the demand for dollars fades, the cost of living for ordinary Americans could rise dramatically. So no, I don't think the dollar will disappear overnight, but its reserve currency status, that can be lost, and we might just be on that path. Now that begs the question, what can you do about it? Let's talk about that next. And by the way, if this is your first time here or if this kind of content resonates with you, please consider liking and subscribing. It really helps out the channel. Thank you. How to prepare just in case. Let me be clear. I'm not trying to be a fearmonger, but if the dollar's dominance is fading even slowly, wouldn't you rather be ahead of it than behind it? This isn't about building a bunker or stockpiling food. It's about being smart with the world as it is, not as we wish it were. So what can you do? Number one, diversify outside the dollar. The dollar's been the king of currencies for nearly 80 years, but kings don't rule forever. If everything you own is denominated in dollars, your income, your savings, your investments, then you're vulnerable to the dollar breaking. Consider allocating into real assets, gold, silver, productive land, even select commodities. You don't need to go all in, but having some exposure outside the US fiat money system can give you a hedge against what might be coming. 2, own what you can touch. In a world where trust is fading, people fall back on what's real. Real things, hard assets, physical ownership. If you could hold it in your hand, stand on it, grow something from it, or use it to produce, then it's got real value. Digital paper promises, not so much. 3, build local resilience. If the world moves away from the dollar, global supply chains get shaky. That means local becomes powerful again. Build relationships with local growers, service providers, and tradespeople. Learn new skills, real ones, fixing things, building, growing, repairing. Those things hold value in every system, dollar or no dollar. 4, reduce dependency on debt. If interest rates spike to keep foreign capital interested in our bonds, then the era of cheap credit ends. So now's the time to pay down high interest debt, avoid adjustable rate loans and obviously high interest debt, and try to keep your expenses low. This isn't doom and gloom prep. This is financial common sense in a world that's become increasingly uncertain. Number 5, stay informed, but stay steady. Don't get caught in the algorithmic panic cycle. Yes, the signs are real. Yes, changes are coming, but smart people don't panic. They plan. Keep your eyes open, stay curious, and don't let short-term noise derail long-term preparation. Now, none of this is about betting against America. I love this country and I want it to succeed. But if we're entering a world where our money isn't automatically trusted anymore, we need to be ready. Because losing reserve status isn't just about geopolitics or central banks. It's about your grocery bill, your family, and your future. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be ready for anything. A closing reflection. So where does this all leave us? The world is slowly changing. Losing reserve currency status doesn't mean the end for the United States, but it does mean the end of a certain kind of easy living that we've all gotten used to. The question is, what if it's already happening? Now, to be fair, there are forces trying to breathe new life into the dollar. The recently passed Genius Act is being promoted as a way to restore trust and shore up the dollar's global dominance, a kind of modern-day reboot of the American financial empire. Brent Johnson calls it a stealth weapon of empire. You can watch my video on it up here. Some believe it could extend the dollar's reign for years to come. Maybe it will. Maybe the dollar's not quite done yet. Maybe this dollar empire has one last trick up its sleeve. At the end of the day, the dollar, like every currency before it, runs on confidence. And once that confidence fades, no law, no bailout, no stimulus can bring it back to the way it was. So don't wait for a headline that says, dollar crashing, but don't panic. By the time you see that, the system will have already changed. Look around. The signs are there. Gold knows, foreign central banks know, even our allies know. So now you know too. And now you can prepare, not with panic, but with clarity. If this video made you think differently, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. And if you want to know what it could look like if the dollar became worthless overnight, then you need to check out my video right up here. It's a fictionalized portrayal, but it's pretty good. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.